ọjọ́ rẹ̀ bí àná bí dàbí ẹ̀wọ̀ náírà wá ìlú polúkúrú mọ̀ṣú ewé tàgbà lọ́jọ́ yan wọn níṣu abẹ́ orí ewé rí ṣùgbọ́n ẹ ò fẹ́ wí abẹ́ orí àgbà ẹ̀rí àtẹnujẹ ló fẹ́ pa yín pẹ̀tẹ̀pẹ̀tẹ̀ taná ní ìpọ̀pá ẹni bá tàgbà kó lọ́mọ ọ̀fẹ́ ni.
The Baldwin, in his famous quote on change, posited that change is inevitable. Change will always occur, but the application or directive to change determines its progress. It is on this note that I welcome you to the most informative, educative, and your analytical program, Pinpoint, from the stable of your favorite radio frequency, iPower 102.7 FM, Emurele. Pinpoint is a program that updates you on the events and happenings reshaping the Nigerian system and polity. This is a program that informs you with detailed analysis of events across politics, security, economy, education, and an in-depth view of government policies with related trending issues in the Nigerian system. The program Pinpoint has a feedback segment where listeners are expected to call in to hear the views, opinions, and contributions to any topical issues discussed. It is on this note that I welcome you on board on the program Pinpoint. My name is Akin Adebayo, your radio host. We want to go on a short break. We'll be back. Please stay tuned. Don't change the frequency. Welcome back. It's still your program, Pinpoint. We are transmitting from your darling station, iPower 102.7 FM, Emurele Owo. Today on the program, we shall be looking into the new tax regime that the president has said will commence from tomorrow. As we all know, the introduction, or let's say the new tax policy, has generated all forms of misgivings, has generated a kind of misfeelings, both in the public, among opposition political parties, equally in the Federal Executive Council, and of course, likewise from the tax office itself, led by Oyedele. It is on this note that we'll be deliberating on what tax is all about, the importance and benefit of tax, the misunderstanding in the policy, how it's going to benefit the Nigerian populace, what we stand to gain if actually this tax reform is introduced. And of course, we are equally going to look into the opposition parties and other human rights organizations that has called for the complete cancellation of the new policy because of the alteration that was observed by a member of the House of Representatives. Of course, it's of the opposition party. All this we are going to put into consideration in the program for today. We'll be back in a moment. Please stay tuned as we go on this musical short break.
Láì sọ̀rọ̀ gidi lọ sọ.
Èmi ò ṣẹ́gun àkàn.
Welcome back. You see your program Pinpoint. I will be starting this program by from my introduction to taxation and the current tax reform debate in Nigeria. Taxation is the cornerstone of modern governance, serving as the primary means by which government fund public services, infrastructure, security, education, healthcare, and social welfare. In Nigeria, a nation of over 200 million people with vast developmental needs, tax revenue is particularly vital to reduce over-reliance on volatile oil exports, which have historically accounted for more than 80% of government income. Effective taxation fosters a social contract. Citizens contribute to the state in exchange for tangible improvement in their lives. For your contribution and feedback, you can link up with us on our social media handle on the Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X handle on iPower 1027 FM. iPower 1027 FM. And you can literally call us on our studio line 081 65 52 4699. I take that again 081 65 52 4699. Nigerian tax system has been plagued by inefficiency, low compliance, that is tax to GDP ratio around 6 to 8%, one of the lowest globally. Of course, if you should put into consideration side by side with other countries' tax generation avenues, it is crystal clear that indeed tax generation in Nigeria is on a very low level compared to other countries. And I think that is one of the major reasons why the government has decided to introduce this new tax reform. Multiple overlapping levies, widespread evasion, which is quite common. I was in a particular forum we are discussing, and I said, from observation, I discovered that it is in the southwest that we paid the highest number of tax. And you can equally generate this as well from the statistician office, whereby there are statistics that shows how tax is being generated in the country. And it's an established fact that indeed southwest is actually generating the highest amount of tax for the country. So of course it's not an issue that should be subject to deliberation. It is an established fact. Now, of course, when we talk about tax evasion, is what we know. There are some particular group of persons in this country that evade tax, that no matter what they will tell you, and in fact they are equally at the forefront of this tax erosion of a thing, that the tax policy should be stopped because they don't actually pay tax there. Because over there they believe it is their right, it is their benefit, it is their heritage not to even pay tax and just to continue benefiting from the government. The question is this: these same people that are saying they're not going to pay tax, whenever they travel out, don't they pay tax in other countries, even in the US or the European countries? Of course they do pay tax. Now, I'm talking about overlapping levies, particularly in the southwest. There are multiplication and duplication of taxes. I think these are one of the things that the new tax regime is trying to look into. And of course, we're talking about poor public trust due to perceived corruption and lack of visible return on tax, of course. To address this, the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu introduced sweeping tax reform bill in 2024, which were passed by the National Assembly and signed into law in June 2025 as the Nigerian Tax Act, Nigerian Tax Administration Act, Nigeria Revenue Service Established Act, and Joint Revenue Board Established Act, collectively known as 2025 Tax Reform Act. These reforms aims to simplify the tax regime, eliminate duplicative taxes, Of course, this has been in the front burner of the Nigerian system, that taxes are being duplicated. You are multi-taxed. And I think this tax reform, as projected in its policy formation, is going to address all this. This reform aims to simplify the tax regime, eliminate duplicative taxes, exempt low-income earners, harmonize revenue collections, and boost non-oil revenue to support economic diversification. Key highlights include raising personal income tax exemption, introducing a consolidated development levy, shifting VR, that is value added tax distribution, towards derivation-based allocation, and modernizing digital economic taxation. What does this mean? It simply means that this time around, the idea of maybe some of the multinationals, as we all know, they are having their offices in Lagos and some in Abuja. Now, and every tax returns back to the various headquarters. But now the tax is now being redrafted in a way that any of these multinationals branches in various states will now be taxed. Not that it will now be sent to maybe the Lagos office or Abuja office. No, because the citizens or the indigents of those states actually consumed the services of those multinationals. I wouldn't want to start mentioning names here. We all know what I'm talking about. At least we do buy airtime. We do some subscriptions, just to mention but a few. So the idea of all the taxes being sent to their headquarters will no longer exist. Rather, it will now be based on where that consumption took place. Take, for instance, any multinational company that we are actually enjoying their services, paying for their services in Ondo State, would no longer be taken to Lagos. Rather, it will be taxed in Ondo State. So the idea of a particular state being the highest that will be generating tax will no longer come to an end. So which means that it is now based on consumption. And I think that is what this particular segment is trying to address. As the law approaches full implementation on January 1st, 2026, a fierce national controversy has erupted over alleged unauthorized alteration to the bill after legislative passage, but before presidential assent and gazetting. Critics, including opposition parties like we all know, lawmakers, civil society, organizations, and human rights groups, claim that continuous provision, such as expanded power for tax authorities to seize assets without court orders and high appeal deposit. What is this saying? It's saying now that this particular alteration now empowers the various tax agencies or tax authorities to now seize assets without court orders. And if I'm not mistaken, how can we sustain such thing? You that you are alleging, you must be able to prove. The executive arm is to implement policies. The judiciary is to interpret. If at all you feel that somebody has violated the new tax law, somebody should be charged to court. And you are not you taking the laws into your hands. And I think that is one of the major things that these human rights groups and other opposition parties are actually agitating for. This allegation has sparked accusation of procedural irregularity, executive overreach, and even forgery, eroding public confidence at a time when Nigerians are already grappling with the high inflation, unemployment, and poverty, while the presidency and the reforms proponents insist the change were administrative errors, now being corrected through resetting. Calls for outright suspension, independent probes, and broader stakeholder consultation continue to grow. This debate raises fundamental questions about transparency in policy making, the sincerity of our leadership, citizens, trust in government and initiatives, and the role of opposition and advocacy group in safeguarding democratic accountability. The discussion examined the necessity, benefits, and drawbacks of taxation in the Nigerian context of the new tax regime and reflect on what this episode reviews about governance, public trust, and the path towards sustaining fiscal reform in Africa's largest economy.
Kẹ́mi ò ṣẹ́nu àkàn ẹ̀yìn àrùn lẹ́ máa wá. Ẹ wá ṣẹlẹ̀ o. Kí ni sùúrù tí ò lérè?
I will go into the benefit of taxation in Nigeria. When effectively managed, taxation offers several advantages to Nigerian economy and society. Primarily, it boosts government revenue. It allows investment in education, healthcare, and security, which can reduce poverty and improve quality of life. Of course, as we all know, even when you travel out to those senior climes, as we always put it, taxation is what is obtainable over there. What are they producing? Or do they have natural resources? But they're taxed heavily, and they're actually making the money from it. And everybody is no doubt better off for it. Now, introduce benefits like full exemption for individual with taxable profit of 800,000 or less annually, which simply means that people that will be taxed henceforth are those earning 800,000 naira annually. If you are below that, you won't be taxed. This is the new tax regime. This is what we want to address. And the very minute you are earning above from 800 upward, then be ready for taxation. Now, of course, after reliefs and exemptions, easing the burden on low-income earners. Additionally, high threshold for tax-free asset disposal, for instance, luxury goods, provide relief to individuals. Taxation can also promote economic equity by redistributing wealth through progressive system, where higher earners pay more. Funding social protection. In the digital economy, proper taxation ensures multinational companies contribute fairly. Yes, that's what I said the other time. That henceforth, multinationals, their contribution will be more fairly. It will not be part, or should I say, sent to their headquarters. Rather, it will be based on where their product or where their services is being consumed. Potential increasing fund for local development. Informal taxation, common in Nigeria, fosters community-driven initiatives like local security or infrastructure. Left for formal systems. Overall, this reform aims to simplify the system, reduces multiplicity of taxes, and encourage investment as outlined in the guide for the 2026 tax change.
Kẹ́mi ò ṣẹ́nu àkàn ẹ̀yìn àrùn lẹ́ máa wá. Ẹ wá ṣẹlẹ̀ o. Kí ni sùúrù tí ò lè?
Now to the main topic, or to the main issue, if I must say, sorry. It has to do with the current controversy, that is the call for suspension of the new tax regime. In late 2025, Nigerian tax landscape has been dominated by the newly enacted tax reform laws signed by President Bola Tinubu, which are set to commence on January 4th, that is tomorrow. So that's why we are beginning this for discussion today, to be coming up by tomorrow, January 4th, 2026. These reforms include change to value-added tax, VAT, personal income tax exemption, and measures to harmonize collections, aiming to increase non-oil revenue and streamline the system. However, significant controversies has risen over alleged unauthorized alteration to the bill after their passage by the National Assembly. Lawmakers, including the House Minority Caucus, have claimed that the gazetted version differs from what was approved, with discrepancies in funding provisions, appeal deposits, asset garnishment rules, and expanded power for tax officers. Among the people that actually raised their voice, or should I say that that were resenting about the new tax form is former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, who has labeled these alleged changes a treasonable felony, accusing the Tinubu administration of forgery. God should just help us. That's what I said the other time. When it comes to the issue of the opposition, of course it is normal. If the APC were to be there as well, or they were to be in the opposition, they will call it do the same. So we should not throw blames. What Atiku is saying is based on his own understanding and it's based on his own opinion. So he's actually is entitled to it. So we should not just sit from the area of opposition. And if we decide to sit from the area of opposition, so be it. The question is this: if APC were to be in the opposition, won't they do same? Of course, they will do same. So we should not condemn Atiku for what he has said. Now, political stakeholders, like I've said, the Nigerian Bar Association has demanded a probe and suspension, citing oversight failure. Civil society groups like Enough is Enough, EIA, Nigerian emphasized anchoring reforms on trust and transparency. The National Association of Nigerian Students, that is NANS, echoes call for the suspension due to public enlightenment and alteration. Opposition figures like Peter Obi have advocated for a broader consultation, warning of economic hardship without them. It stands now amplified by a group like the National Opposition Movement, which demands nationwide stakeholders' engagement, social protection, and a focus on taxing luxuries rather than poverty. Senate Chief Whip Alin Dume has urged Tinubu to hold the rollout amid this allegation. Despite the uproar, President Bola Tinubu has dismissed suspension call, reaffirming that the law, including those effective from January 2025, June 2025, and the rest from January 1st, 2026, will proceed as planned to ensure policy consistency and economic reform. Now, that's where the question is. Should it, because of policy consistency, now gazette something that was altered, that was not regazetted, that was not even subjected to National Assembly ratification, because of want to make sure that it does not result to kind of policy somersault? Which is more important? Is it the policy somersault that is more important, or the alleged fraud that was involved in the policy, or probably the outcry as some Nigerians that this something should be suspended and should be reviewed? But the president insists that he will continue with the policy that from next month, which is tomorrow, from next year, which is starting from tomorrow, that it will not amount the kind of policy somersault. The Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee Chairman Taiwo Oyedele attributed discrepancies to process and system issues like manual handling error, not deliberate sabotage, and called for addressing them without blame. This standoff highlights deep division, with proponents viewing the reform as essential for fiscal sustainability, while critics argue they risk worsening inequality without proper vetting. The question now is this: should it, because of the system error, now implement a policy that was altered without the knowledge of the National Assembly? And as alleged by Atiku Abubakar, that it is that it should be treated like a treated felony act. As Nigeria stands on the brink of implementing the 2025 Tax Reform Act on January 1st, 2026, the ongoing saga underscores profound questions about governance in the nation, grappling with economic volatility and institutional fragility. Despite President Bola Tinubu's insistence on proceeding amid allegation of post-passage alteration, now attributed to administrative errors rather than deliberate forgery, the reforms aim to streamline taxation, boost non-oil revenue, and foster equity. Yet, the process has exposed fissures in public confidence, with calls for suspending persisting from opposition figures, lawmakers, and civil society. This development provides a lens to evaluate leadership sincerity, citizen trust, and the role of dissenting voices. It is on this note that I would like to bring the program to an end. Pinpoint. We'll be having another swell time next week. Before going, I would like to show my appreciation to the general manager of this great radio station, IPA 102.7 FM, in person of Engineer Paul Olotu, my head of program, Olurotimi Elijah, my head of technical unit, person of Mr. Shegun, and all the organs, let me put it that way, in this great studio, in this great radio station. I want to say a very big thank you for this rare privilege. And to you, my listeners, you are the most important person. And still, if you want to still make your opinion, suggestions, contribution known, you can still contact us via our social media handle, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X handle on iPower 1027 FM, iPower 1027 FM, or through the studio line number 081 65 52 4699. I'll say that again, 081 65 52 4699. I remain your host on Pinpoint, one of your most educative, entertaining program, Akin Adebayo. See you again next week. Bye-bye.